As World War II drew to a brutal close, Germany lay in ruins, its cities shattered, its regime toppled. The triumphant Allied powers, the United States, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and France, faced the monumental task of rebuilding, but also of securing the spoils of victory. Amidst the chaos, a silent, urgent race began, not for territory, but for something far more intangible: knowledge. The scientific and technological innovations of Nazi Germany, once weapons of destruction, now held the promise of a new future, or a new conflict. The division of Germany among the victorious Allies wasn't just geographical, it extended to every facet of the vanquished nation's assets. Factories, resources, intellectual property, and critically, its scientific minds, became bargaining chips in the emerging geopolitical landscape. Each power sought to gain an advantage, anticipating future rivalries even as the smoke of war still cleared. The scientists, once instruments of Hitler's regime, suddenly found themselves objects of intense international desire, their expertise a prize beyond measure. Germany, despite its moral collapse, had been a crucible of groundbreaking scientific and technological innovation during the war. Its engineers and researchers had developed sophisticated rockets like the V-2, pioneered jet engines that revolutionized aviation, and conducted advanced medical research, albeit often with horrifying ethical breaches. These advancements represented a quantum leap in human capability, and for the victorious powers, they were invaluable. The question was, how far would they go to acquire them, and at what cost? Initially, the United States adopted a firm stance against any collaboration with former Nazis. Joint Chiefs of Staff Directive 1067, issued in April 1945, explicitly prohibited any aid to or fraternization with members of the Nazi Party or its affiliates. It was a clear declaration of moral intent, aiming to denazify Germany and punish those complicit in its war crimes. This directive reflected the initial outrage and desire for justice that permeated the Allied forces, a principle that would soon be tested and ultimately compromised. However, as the dust settled, strategic realities began to overshadow moral imperatives. The U.S. Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, or JIOA, was swiftly created with a specific mandate: to exploit German scientists, engineers, and technicians for American benefit. This agency was tasked with identifying, assessing, and ultimately, recruiting these individuals, even if their pasts were deeply tainted. The JIOA's mission subtly but fundamentally shifted the American approach, prioritizing intelligence gathering and technological acquisition over the strict enforcement of JCS 1067. The first covert steps to bring German scientists to the United States began in 1945 under the codename Operation Overcast. It was a highly secretive program, designed to bypass public scrutiny and the moral strictures of existing directives. The initial focus was narrow, primarily targeting specialists whose knowledge was deemed critical for immediate military advantage. This operation laid the groundwork for a much larger, more ambitious, and ultimately more ethically fraught undertaking, setting a precedent for prioritizing strategic gain over ethical considerations. Under Operation Overcast, selected German scientists, along with their families, were quietly moved from their homes or internment camps to facilities in the American zone. Their identities were often obscured, their pasts deliberately left unexamined. The journey to America was equally discreet, veiled in secrecy to prevent both public outcry and rival powers, particularly the Soviet Union, from intercepting these valuable human assets. It was a clear indication of the high stakes involved, and the lengths to which the US was willing to go. By 1946, the program was formalized and renamed Operation Paperclip. The new name, reportedly referring to the paperclips used to attach the security clearances to the scientists' dossiers, belied the immense moral weight of the project. It signaled a broader, more institutionalized effort to integrate these German minds into the American scientific and defense establishment. What began as an urgent, temporary measure evolved into a long-term strategy, cementing the United States' commitment to leveraging Nazi-era expertise. The timing of Operation Paperclip's formalization was no accident. The fragile alliance that had defeated Hitler was rapidly fracturing, giving way to the ideological chasm of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union, erstwhile partners, now stood poised as bitter adversaries. This escalating rivalry provided the ultimate justification for Paperclip, transforming what might have been a temporary expediency into a perceived national imperative. The race for technological superiority became paramount, overriding previous ethical qualms. The Cold War fueled an undeniable urgency to acquire German expertise. Both the US and the USSR recognized that the next global conflict, if it came, would be fought with advanced weaponry and scientific breakthroughs. German rocket technology, in particular, became a prized asset, capable of delivering devastating payloads across continents. The pursuit of these scientists was not merely about prestige, it was about national security and survival, a desperate scramble to secure any advantage in a world teetering on the brink of a new kind of war. Among the primary targets of Operation Paperclip were the rocket scientists responsible for Germany's fearsome V-2 ballistic missile. This weapon, though ultimately failing to change the course of World War II, demonstrated unprecedented engineering prowess. At the forefront of this team was Wernher von Braun, a brilliant engineer whose dreams extended far beyond military applications, envisioning space travel and lunar exploration. His capture and recruitment became a top priority, seen as essential for America's burgeoning rocketry programs. Wernher von Braun's trajectory in the United States was meteoric. From developing ballistic missiles for the U.S. Army, he transitioned into becoming a central figure in the nascent American space program. His vision and leadership were instrumental in building the rockets that would carry the first American satellites into orbit and, eventually, propel astronauts to the moon. He became a public face of American scientific achievement, yet the shadow of his past association with the Nazi regime and forced labor camps in Germany remained. While rockets dominated the public imagination, Operation Paperclip also actively recruited aeronautical engineers. These specialists had developed advanced jet engines and aerodynamic designs that far surpassed Allied capabilities in many areas. Their expertise was crucial for the development of superior fighter jets, bombers, and reconnaissance aircraft that would define the Cold War air superiority. The pursuit of these individuals showcased a comprehensive strategy to bolster American military and technological might across various domains. Beyond rockets and aviation, a more unsettling category of scientists was also sought: medical doctors. German medical research, especially in aerospace and high-altitude physiology, was advanced, but often achieved through horrific human experimentation in concentration camps. The allure of this knowledge, however acquired, proved irresistible to some sectors of the U.S. military. This marked a profound moral compromise, knowingly engaging with individuals whose scientific contributions were directly linked to atrocities. One of the most controversial figures brought to the U.S. was Hubertus Strughold, often dubbed the father of space medicine. Strughold had directed medical research for the Luftwaffe during the war. His work involved experiments conducted at the Dachau concentration camp, where prisoners were subjected to extreme conditions, including freezing and low-pressure simulations, often resulting in death. Despite these damning associations, Strughold was recruited and went on to work for the U.S. Air Force, making significant contributions to aerospace medicine. Strughold's case perfectly encapsulates the profound ethical dilemma at the heart of Operation Paperclip. While his contributions to space medicine were undeniable, helping to safeguard American astronauts, they were inseparable from the horrific human cost of his wartime research. His presence in the U.S. program continues to spark debate, serving as a stark reminder that scientific advancement can sometimes come at an unconscionable moral price, leaving a lingering stain on otherwise celebrated achievements in space exploration. Another deeply troubling recruitment was Kurt Blohm, a high-ranking Nazi bioweapons expert. Blohm was involved in human experimentation during the war, particularly in research related to biological warfare agents. Despite being tried at Nuremberg, he was acquitted, a verdict many still question. Soon after, He was secretly brought to the United States and put to work for the U.S. Army Chemical Corps, ironically, on projects related to biological defense. His presence highlights the extreme lengths taken in the pursuit of specialized, albeit morally tainted, knowledge. Blome's recruitment underscored the desperation to acquire any advantage in the emerging Cold War, even if it meant collaborating with individuals deeply implicated in abhorrent practices. The perceived threat of biological warfare from the Soviet Union provided the rationale. His work for the U.S. Army Chemical Corps demonstrated a willingness to overlook a past that included direct involvement in human experimentation, all for the sake of perceived national security. The ethical lines blurred, and for many, were irrevocably crossed. The cases of Strughold and Blome, alongside countless others whose names are less known, crystallized the central ethical dilemma of Operation Paperclip, the utilization of individuals with morally reprehensible pasts for national security and scientific gain. It presented a profound conflict between the principles of justice and the pragmatism of power. The architects of Paperclip argued that the immediate threat of the Cold War justified these compromises, but the moral cost of such decisions continues to echo through history, questioning the very definition of progress. To facilitate these recruitments, a crucial and disturbing aspect of Operation Paperclip was the systematic suppression or whitewashing of documents linking scientists to Nazi atrocities. Records detailing their affiliations with the Nazi Party, their involvement in war crimes, or their participation in human experimentation were deliberately altered, obscured, or simply removed from official dossiers. This act of bureaucratic deceit was essential to granting them security clearances and allowing them to enter the United States. The Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, JIOA, played a central role in this process of historical revisionism. It was the JIOA that was tasked with vetting these scientists, and when confronted with damning evidence, often chose to redact or reinterpret the findings. Their reports frequently downplayed or outright denied past Nazi affiliations, transforming perpetrators into mere technical specialists or impressed labor. This systemic erasure of their pasts allowed the program to proceed without overt public or congressional challenge. The primary justification offered for these ethically dubious actions was the imperative of national security. In the immediate aftermath of World War II, with the Soviet Union emerging as a formidable rival, access to advanced German technology and scientific minds was considered a non-negotiable strategic advantage. The fear was that if the US didn't acquire these scientists, the Soviets would, tipping the balance of power in a potentially devastating new global conflict. This fear became the powerful rationale for the moral compromises. For many, Operation Paperclip represented a veritable pact with the devil. The U.S. government, by actively recruiting individuals with documented connections to Nazi atrocities and by deliberately obscuring their pasts, made a profound moral calculation. It traded accountability and justice for perceived scientific and military superiority. This decision continues to raise uncomfortable questions about the limits of pragmatism and the long-term integrity of a nation that purports to uphold democratic values and human rights. The intensity of the US-Soviet rivalry was a constant, driving force behind Paperclip. Both superpowers understood the strategic value of German scientific prowess. The Soviets launched their own aggressive programs, such as Operation Paperclip, to seize German technology and personnel. This competition created a frantic race for minds, where securing a scientist often meant preventing the adversary from acquiring the same knowledge. The Cold War context elevated these scientists from war criminals to invaluable assets. The deception surrounding Operation Paperclip was extensive. Documents were not merely filed away, they were actively manipulated. Security clearance forms were altered, intelligence reports sanitized, and even immigration records were falsified to ensure the smooth entry and integration of these scientists. This systematic whitewashing created an official narrative that minimized or eliminated any mention of their Nazi pasts, allowing them to rebuild careers in America without public outcry or legal challenge. The core issue that continues to haunt Operation Paperclip is the question of accountability. Many of the scientists involved had, directly or indirectly, supported or participated in a regime responsible for unspeakable atrocities. By bringing them to America and concealing their pasts, the U.S. effectively shielded them from justice. This decision bypassed the very principles of post-war denazification and raised profound questions about the moral obligations of a nation in the pursuit of power and progress, leaving a legacy of unaddressed crimes. Despite its ethical controversies, the impact of Operation Paperclip on American scientific and technological development was undeniable. The German scientists, particularly those in rocketry, played a pivotal role in shaping the early decades of the space age. Their expertise accelerated America's journey from nascent missile technology to the ambitious goal of lunar landings. Without their contributions, it is argued, the timeline for American space exploration would have been significantly delayed, altering the course of the Cold War and scientific history. Wernher von Braun's influence on NASA, in particular, cannot be overstated. From the Redstone Arsenal in Alabama, he led the team that developed the Jupiter-C rocket, which launched America's first satellite, Explorer 1. Later, as director of the Marshall Space Flight Center, he oversaw the development of the mighty Saturn V rocket, the engine of the Apollo moon missions. His genius, cultivated under the Nazi regime, became indispensable to America's greatest scientific triumphs, solidifying NASA's German roots. Beyond space, the German scientists' impact on U.S. military technology was equally profound. Aeronautical engineers contributed to jet aircraft design, enhancing speed and performance. Rocket experts laid the foundation for intercontinental ballistic missiles, a critical deterrent during the Cold War. Medical researchers advanced understanding of high-altitude flight and human endurance, crucial for fighter pilots and future astronauts. Operation Paperclip undeniably provided a powerful boost to America's defense capabilities, cementing its status as a technological superpower. In the medical field, the knowledge gleaned from figures like Hubertus Strughold undeniably pushed the frontiers of aerospace medicine. Understanding the physiological challenges of spaceflight was vital for the safety of astronauts. However, this progress was forever tainted by its origins in human experimentation. The moral scars of such research persist, reminding us that scientific gains, when purchased at the expense of human dignity, carry an unbearable burden. The advancements came at an ethical cost that is impossible to fully reconcile. The long-term consequences of Operation Paperclip extend far beyond the immediate gains. It left an indelible moral stain on America's post-war history, raising enduring questions about accountability and justice for Nazi-era crimes. The program normalized the idea that national interest could, and perhaps should, override ethical considerations and international law. This precedent continues to fuel debate, challenging the narratives of clean victory and moral superiority that often accompany the end of major conflicts. Operation Paperclip forces us to confront a difficult truth, that some of America's most celebrated scientific achievements, particularly in space exploration, were built, in part, on dark foundations. The brilliance of engineers and doctors, honed under a tyrannical regime, was seamlessly integrated into a democratic society, with their pasts carefully obscured. This uncomfortable reality highlights the complex interplay between science, morality, and geopolitics, where the pursuit of progress can sometimes lead to profound ethical compromises. Even decades later, Operation Paperclip continues to cast a long shadow over American history. The ethical debate surrounding the program remains vibrant, fueled by ongoing revelations and historical analysis. It serves as a potent reminder that the choices made in moments of perceived crisis can have unforeseen and far-reaching moral implications, shaping national identity and challenging the very principles a nation claims to uphold. The legacy is a complex tapestry of triumph and profound moral compromise. Operation Paperclip represents a complex inheritance for the United States. It was a program born of desperation and strategic necessity, accelerating America's technological rise during the critical early years of the Cold War. Yet, it achieved this by making a profound moral trade-off, integrating individuals with deeply troubling pasts into the fabric of American science. The story of Paperclip is a testament to human ingenuity and ambition, but also a stark warning about the ethical costs of unchecked pragmatism, leaving us to grapple with its enduring, contradictory legacy.